Welcome to Space Matrix. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more updates. It began with a tweet. President Donald Trump stunned the world by announcing a sweeping 50% tariff on all imported goods. No exceptions, no special deals for allies. Every nation faced a new economic wall. This was more than a policy shift, it was a declaration of economic war. Global markets plunged, analysts scrambled, the rules of trade had changed overnight. The United States, once the architect of global commerce, was now tearing it down. The era of interconnected supply chains and shared prosperity was suddenly in jeopardy. The tariff was a rejection of globalism, forcing every country to reconsider its relationship with America. Allies felt betrayed. Rivals saw opportunity. The world braced for chaos. The White House defended the move as necessary to revive American industry. Critics called it reckless and dangerously isolationist. The aftershocks rippled worldwide, forcing nations to choose sides in a conflict they never wanted. The global order was in disarray, the future uncertain. The stage was set for a dramatic realignment of power. The world held its breath, waiting to see who would blink first. The old rules were gone, a new volatile era had begun. In Canada, the tariff hit like a thunderclap. 3/4 of Canadian exports depended on the US market. Factories faced closure, jobs vanished overnight. Ottawa was gripped by disbelief and panic. In India, the blow was just as severe. Years of export-driven growth were threatened, and millions faced economic uncertainty. Prime Minister Modi's vision of a rising India was suddenly at risk. The American market, once a beacon, had become a fortress. The human cost was immediate layoffs in Canadian towns, silent looms in Indian mills. The tariff was no longer abstract, it was a direct threat to livelihoods. Political pressure mounted in both countries to act decisively. Quiet diplomacy was no longer an option. The crisis demanded bold, creative leadership. As the shock settled, both nations realized they needed new strategies and new partners. The world watched as Canada and India faced a common storm. In Ottawa, Mark Carney, former central banker, was tasked with finding a way out. Carney knew a trade war with the US would be disastrous for Canada. Instead, he looked east, seeking allies among other nations hurt by the tariff. Quietly, he reached out, planting seeds for a coordinated response. In New Delhi, Prime Minister Modi faced the crisis with resolve. He saw the tariff as an affront to India's sovereignty and ambition. Modi, too, knew direct confrontation was futile. He called for a bold, independent strategy, one that would reduce India's reliance on the West. Advisors debated retaliation or caution, but Modi pushed for a third way: new alliances. Canada's name surfaced repeatedly. An idea took shape, one that would have been unthinkable just weeks before. Two leaders, worlds apart, were now united by necessity. The seeds of an unlikely partnership were sown. The global trade map was about to be redrawn. A Canada-India alliance seemed improbable. Different continents, cultures, and economies. Yet the American tariff created a powerful shared interest. Both nations needed new markets and partners. Mark Carney initiated a secure call with Prime Minister Modi. Carney proposed a new trade bloc, middle powers uniting to bypass American volatility. Modi saw the logic. Canada offered stability, technology, and a G7 partnership. For India, it was a chance to showcase its global influence. The synergy was undeniable. They agreed to explore a comprehensive economic partnership. The announcement shocked the world, a bold, coordinated response to US protectionism. It wasn't a regional bloc or an alliance of old friends, but a strategic marriage of necessity. The world watched as this unlikely duo prepared to challenge American dominance. The first cracks in the new economic order had appeared. A new chapter in global trade was beginning. Negotiations began at breakneck speed under immense pressure. Canada wanted access for agriculture and manufacturing. India pushed for its pharmaceuticals and IT. Old sticking points resurfaced, threatening collapse. Talks in Geneva stretched through sleepless nights. Mark Carney and Indian ministers led directly, cutting through red tape. Disputes over dairy and intellectual property nearly derailed the process, but the looming US tariff kept both sides at the table. Washington dismissed the talks as desperate, but anxiety grew as progress leaked out. The breakthrough came in a tense, all-night session. Carney and his Indian counterpart agreed. Perfection was the enemy of progress. They settled on a phased approach with creative compromises and joint ventures. As dawn broke, the outlines of a historic deal emerged. The impossible was suddenly within reach. The final agreement was a strategic masterstroke. The Indo-Canadian Strategic Partnership for Economic Resilience created a seamless, tariff-free supply chain. Canadian resources flowed to India, where they became finished goods for global export. bypassing U.S. tariffs. A joint infrastructure fund and digital alliance fueled new trade corridors and tech innovation. Canadian and Indian companies could now collaborate without U.S. interference. The impact was immediate. Canadian industries found new markets, Indian manufacturing surged, other nations took notice, Japan, South Korea, and the EU explored similar partnerships. A new network of trade alliances began to form, reducing dependence on the U.S. The Trump administration was blindsided. Instead of forcing countries to the table, the tariff pushed them to build new systems. American companies suffered, and the promised manufacturing boom never arrived. The economic weapon had backfired. The world was moving on, without the United States. The trade battle of 2025 changed everything. The U.S. tariff, meant to assert dominance, revealed its limits. Economic coercion triggered innovation, not capitulation. The Canada-India alliance became a blueprint for a multipolar global economy. Middle powers, united by necessity, created a new balance of power. Europe, South America, and Africa followed suit, forging their own alliances. The World Trade Organization found renewed purpose. New hubs of influence emerged: Ottawa, New Delhi, Brussels, Tokyo. The U.S. was forced to quietly retreat, phasing out the tariff. But the world had changed. New trade routes and partnerships endured. Canada and India, once unlikely partners, now led a resilient new bloc. The future belonged to those who built bridges, not walls.